Why the V2?
Well, you know, if you think about the V2, all right, it was built for a completely different purpose. It was to try and eliminate us in London, of course. But if you think what happened on the back of that, we have voyages to the moon, Mars, so on and so forth, satellites, all the spin-offs. You can now basically make phone calls and send information all around the world, all on the back of satellite communication, television and so on. In other words, it is the future, and that's why I chose that particular item.
I'm sure anyone looking at the full list will have their own ideas about what's the greatest invention, because it's all terribly subjective. But your own invention, the wind-up radio, made such a huge difference to remote areas in Africa, and we often forget it's the simplest things that often make the most impact.
Yeah, very, very often. You know, I always say art is pleasure, but invention is treasure. Ask yourself, what's more important, dead sheep in formaldehyde, or a paperclip? Huh? And yet a paperclip could have been created by a little one. Do you understand me? But how many of us haven't got a paperclip? Or indeed a zip? Those everyday things.
Well, a study I saw not so long ago was saying actually the most important inventions are the ones that make a lot of domestic difference in the household, like washing machines, rather than the great big, very exotic inventions.
Yeah, I suppose there's a measure of truth in that. But you see, inventions are not just designed for the improvement of all our lives. Sometimes these inventions can be for perhaps physically impaired people, for example. I had a lady contact me this morning, an elderly lady. She said, why don't they make loo brushes longer? Then I wouldn't have to bend down every time I wanted to clean the toilet. Silly things like that. No, we're laughing, but you see, we don't have the problem, most of us. But if you are impaired in some way, just that little extension to a brush.
So what kind of things are you? Have you come up with anything else? Things like along the same lines?
Well, yes. So look, I've got a wind-up walking stick. Now, why would I want that? All right. Hope you can see it. It goes together in a normal way. You can adjust the height, but the nice thing is it's got a handle on it. All right. So that when you actually use it, if you want to, you can see where you're going. All right. Now, if you look at the stem on there, you can see that's flashing as well. So as I walk across a crossing, I can be seen. It's also got a little hooter on it, but the thing that people seem to like most of all is the fact that should I drop my keys or something, then I can always pick the things up, you see?
Well, that's pretty ingenious. Do you think
well,
there's...
it's just simple.
Yeah, it is a simple idea, but I mean, do you think there's enough encouragement and resources for inventors to actually turn their minds to things like that?
No, and I'll tell you why. It's this government and the previous governments. I've been turned down by so many people that I went to. But you know, when I ask people if they were taught anything about intellectual property, oh, what's that, at school, they all say no. Look, nobody pays you for a good idea. They might pay you for a little piece of paper which says you own that idea. Now, if you go down the pub and tell all your friends about this great invention of yours, you have disclosed it. Now, once you have disclosed it, you cannot now protect it. We are absolutely brilliant in this nation at inventing, and if you go to the Science Museum, you'll see what we came up with. And yet we're absolutely appalling when it comes to trying to help inventors, and even worse when it comes to repaying them. If you look through the history of great British inventors, with the exception of one or two, most of those people died in poverty. And why? It's because the rip-off merchants come in and take those ideas, steal their intellectual property, make an absolute pile of money, and the inventor, he or she, is lost into obscurity. And we have to stop that.
Well, of course, the list at the Science Museum includes, you know, things that we can't imagine living without, like computers and steam engine, yes, and the discovery of penicillin. Yeah. What do you think the next big thing will be, if you can look in your crystal ball and tell us, what would you like to see?
Well, you see, I'm very honoured to be associated with this wind-up technology. We're getting to a situation where as technology improves, the amount of power that's required to drive things like mobile phones, for example, is coming down, 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 down. I've got on the horizon, I've already done it, we've done it, is a wind-up mobile phone, so if you're out in the middle of the desert, you can make a call if there's a satellite up there, and a sat-nav, for example. In other words, there are so many little gizmos and gadgets now that are spun off on the back of this, you know, rather medieval-looking radio.
And you were talking about the V2 rocket when I first came to you, Trevor, and it's interesting that a lot of previous inventions were all about destruction or weapons. Do you think we're moving away from that and we're now looking at more altruistic things?
Well, if you think about my favourite British inventor was Frank Whittle. Now, do you know he was 21 in 1930 when he invented the jet engine? But he went to the chief government scientist who pooh-poohed his idea, right? And so Frank had to start his own company with borrowed money, would you believe? And of course came up with the first jet engine, which was then copied by the Germans prior to the war. And in fact, the Germans had jet planes flying before us. Had we listened to 21-year-old Frank Whittle, World War II could have been World War I.5 because our brave Commonwealth pilots would have been flying not Spitfires and Hurricanes, but jet planes. And that's just how one person can change all our lives. I mean, we have to appreciate what a brilliant talent we have when it comes to invention, but the way that we are treated. I mean, I've got a classic letter that came from the Design Council saying that nobody could afford my radio, and the extent to which the component parts could be manufactured in these aisles was said to be limited. Basically, my radio had to be made in South Africa.
Let's take a look at your radio, Trevor. I think you've got it there, haven't you? Let's have a look.
What, the big old boy?
Is it the great big thing? There you go.
Can you see that?
I can see it.
Now, you see it's got a solar panel on it. It's got wind up, of course, and it has a torch, but this had a pink bulb because they didn't have white light then. And, of course, your mobile phone. So that was a wind-up device. Now, if you look at this little chap here, this little fella here, if I can get it to work, well, you can hear it, and it's got a light on it, and in fact, white light, red light, and you can recharge your mobile phone on it as well, and of course it works in the sunlight. And would you believe it all began on the back of that, which is a cheap transistor radio, a dynamo, a couple of bits of wire, and a hand brace.
Oh, that's truly
how
amazing
inventors
stuff.
Get started.
And I know that you're going to receive an honorary doctorate this summer for your wind-up radio, so many congratulations for that. And thank you very much indeed for talking to us here on
Well, it's my great
Jazeera.
pleasure. And thank you very much for having me. But don't forget inventors, all right?